position so you can hear me. Can you hear me? Okay. So thank you all so much for coming. It's really inspiring to see this, to be in the company of an amazing group of activists. I always love coming to Canada. I feel like you guys are so far ahead of us here in Canada from where we are in the United States. And I'm always really inspired when I come up here. So I also want to thank the organizers for inviting us and for setting all of this up. So I want to talk about the role of the global north in mining activism and how we need, how the previous session I was at ended with the question, so what can we do? And I think that's the question we're always asking ourselves. So what is our role here? What are we supposed to be doing? How can we be effective activists? And that's what I want to talk about here, not because I have the answer, but because I want to maybe raise some questions that will help us all continue to think about this. So the global north and mining activism. Some of the pitfalls and some of the challenges, and some of the hopeful ones. Last night, when Sakura was introducing me, when I showed the film that some of you saw on the cost of power, on the impact of coal mining on communities in La Guajira, Colombia, she sort of looked at me tentatively and said, I think we can say that Avi is an anti-mining activist. And that's actually a question that I'm frequently asking myself. Am I for a more just mining, or am I against mining altogether? It's a question that comes up a lot. And if I am against mining altogether, what does it mean to be against mining? When we look at the Cerrejón coal mine in Colombia, or at any one particular mine and its impact on the surrounding communities, it seems really obvious that we have to be against mining and we want to stop mining. But I think that once you start getting more involved, it also becomes more complicated. And to articulate some of those complications, if you saw the film last night, you also saw that the union in the Cerrejón mine, Sintra Carbón, has been extremely vocal and active in support of the communities affected by the mine. And we work very closely with the union in the mine. And I wanted to recount to you 2 conversations with union leaders about this issue of what does it mean to be against mining. One was about 2 years ago when I take delegations to Appalachia and Colombia every summer. I'm taking one in a couple of weeks. If anyone's interested, make sure you let me know because we still have a couple of spaces left. To look at the impact of coal mining on various different social sectors and to talk about how we can be more effective activists. So on one of our delegations a couple of years ago, there was a young woman from the Sierra Club. And the Sierra Club was just beginning, based in the United States, was just beginning an anti-coal campaign called Beyond Coal. And the idea of this campaign is to get rid of coal altogether. And so she said to the president of the union, don't you agree that coal is just an inherently dirty resource? It needs to stay in the ground. We have to stop mining it. And he looked at her long and hard, and he said, you know what? You're asking the wrong person. If we're mining coal here in Colombia, it's not for us. We're mining it for you. You are the ones, 100% of our coal is exported. You're the ones who are using our coal. And he didn't go on to say it, but clearly at the back of his mind was, you know, you're going to go home and drive your car and turn on your lights and use your laptop and all of your other gadgets. Some of the ones that we use now didn't even exist when he was making this statement. But, you know, who are you to tell us to stop mining coal? How do you expect to live your life if we stop mining coal? You have to think a lot more about how we're going to change the world before you tell us to stop mining coal. The second conversation was also at an anti-coal event. In the town where I live, Salem, Massachusetts, we have a power plant that's fired by coal, and we import our coal from Colombia. And this is actually how I first got involved. So there was a strong local movement to close the power plant, and they actually had teamed up with the Sierra Club and their no coal campaign. So there was a no coal event in Salem, and a Colombian union leader, also from Sintra Carbón, who we had up on tour, spoke, and he was asked the same question. Don't you think we just have to get rid of coal? And he said, you know, you're saying that from your perspective, but you have to understand what my country is like. In my country, we have a 20% unemployment rate. We have 40% of the population living in poverty. There are 10,000 people who work in this coal mine. We want to change a lot of things, but we have to think in bigger terms about what our country needs and not just narrowly stop coal and end our conversation there. We need to think about what kind of economic development we're going to have, not only in our country, but in the world. We have to think about what economic development means and how we want to use and distribute the resources in our planet. So it's not enough to me for you to say, stop coal. Well, look at this mine. What's going to happen to that land that has already been mined? If this company closes and moves away, that's not going to help the people who work in the mine. That's not going to help the people who live in the area that's already been destroyed. We need to talk about social responsibility and what kind of global economic system we want to have in a much bigger way. Just closing that mine isn't really going to help anybody. In fact, it's going to harm a lot of people. It might make you feel better, but it's not going to help us. So those are some of the questions that I think about a lot in our activism here in the global north. So now let me pause for just a minute to talk about history. I have to talk about history since I'm a historian. But I think it's important to have a sense, I'm just going to really quickly talk about the role of mining in the history of our economy, in the history of the world that we've created, because I actually think that mining is at the heart of global capitalism and colonialism over 500 years. So the world we live in today was shaped by mining. The Spanish colonial project was shaped by mining. Mining threw people off the land, so it dispossessed indigenous people at the same time that it enslaved African people, dispossessed them from their lands in Africa to bring them to the Americas to work in these mining enterprises, dispossessed indigenous people from their lands in the Americas to work in these European organized mining projects. It set up the colonial and post-colonial world that we live in today with the problems of dispossession, what we could call underdevelopment or de-development, skewed development, oppressive political systems, global economic inequality, and the transfer of resources from the global south to the global north is a long historical process, and the types of political and economic systems implemented in the global south to carry out that extraction of resources, and then the concentration and overconsumption of resources in the global north also dates back to this original colonial period. So in the original 1492 to 1800s, it was pure wealth that was being extracted. It was gold and silver. Starting in the 1800s, 1900s, and into the 21st century, we have industrial resources being extracted from the global north for the industrialization of the global south. And once again, we have exploitative and oppressive labor systems. We have dispossession of people from their lands in the global south. And in some ways, we can say that there are global souths inside the global north because there are indigenous and non-indigenous communities in the global north that in the very same ways have been dispossessed of their lands and brought into exploitative labor relationships for the extraction of resources, for the overconsumption of the larger populations of the global north. So we've created superfluous populations through this system of economic exploitation and economic integration. We've created unemployment, people who can't find jobs, who have no place in this new economic system. And we've dispossessed people from traditional ways of sustenance, of agricultural, farming, hunting, and fishing, which we hear over and over again in both La Guajira and Appalachia. We used to support ourselves by farming, hunting, and fishing. And now we can't because the mines have taken that away from us, and the mines won't employ us, or if they do employ us, only employ us under the most exploitative conditions. So creating this regional and global economic inequality through a system at which mining is really at the center. Mining is at the center of the industrial project and of the standard of living in the